There's a question in chat. We ready to launch? Sorry, I just had...
All right, folks. Hello and welcome to the Launcher live stream. My name is Mikhail Klimentov. I'm an editor at Launcher, the Washington Post's video game and esports vertical. With me today, I've got Shannon Liao. Shannon, say hi.
Hey everyone, I'm the video games reporter at Washington Post, so thanks for having me.
We've also got Gene Park. Gene, say hello.
Hey everyone, I am back from my irregularly scheduled existential crises.
We're glad you're back. We're glad you're back. And last but not least, we have with us Teddy Amenabar. Teddy, say hello.
Hey, I'm an audience editor at the Post and happy to be here.
Rad. Well, let's jump right into it. It's been a wild week, lots of stories, lots of news. But in particular today, just now, how many minutes ago, Teddy, did the Overwatch League begin its season?
About 90 minutes ago now, and the first match is still happening now. So it is Houston Outlaws versus Dallas Fuel. Got to check the last recent score. But yeah, fourth season, all online after going online last season. It just got announced that there are going to be some live matches in China starting in June. So it seems like there will be some bit of hybrid return to live events for Overwatch down the road. Who knows about North America, but yeah. Are you guys excited? Is this exciting?
I can't speak for anyone else. I am mildly skeptical. We'll get into that. Shannon, how do you feel about the Overwatch League, if in any way whatsoever?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I try not to have like strong feelings for it either way, but I do try to watch it and cover it every year if possible. Last time I really paid attention to it was 2019, and back then I remember they were really proud to say that they had hit, I believe, like 1 million views. And I remember that being not very impressive to me. And I said, well, that's pretty low compared to others. So I don't know if they've improved their viewership since then, and if Teddy can speak to that, but we'll see.
Yeah, Teddy, what are the viewership numbers looking like right now?
Last time I really paid attention to it was...
Yeah, I mean, I've never... So for those who don't know, I reported on Overwatch League last season pretty regularly for the Post, and I never wrote a one article about viewership because it can be a little hard to wrap your arms around. But the general consensus from my reporting is that viewership was down last season, especially when they switched online. After they switched online, they moved to a tournament model, and I think that added more stakes to regular season matches. That you saw an uptick in viewership there, and when I talk to people around the league, the general answer is viewership has not met what Overwatch was on Twitch. That they moved to YouTube and it's dropped since then. And I think, if you were somebody who was defending that in the league, you would say, well, YouTube isn't Twitch. YouTube is about live, not really about live events. Sorry, it's more about VODs. It's more about clips. So they would make the argument that they were also changing their strategy a bit to care a little bit less about the live stream. I think a critic would just say that you might be changing the equation to fit the outcome that's happened. So that's both sides of it. And right now, 90,000 people are watching this match. That, from my memory, seems pretty on par with what you had at the grand finals for season 3, but yeah, that goes nowhere close to League of Legends. And I think Valorant, though Valorant's a little squishy, I think Valorant has definitely been beating that lately.
Yeah, the thing about Valorant that I found really interesting, and Riot has kind of a mixed approach to this. Some players like their approach, others don't because it differs from region to region. But one big thing that Riot has been doing recently is that they will let big streamers co-stream games. In a lot of cases, because these streamers are deeply familiar with Valorant, know the players really well, and so on. Yesterday during an open qualifier in which like 90% of the teams are no good. I mean, they are like top 10% of players probably, but compared to tier 1, they're not there. And I was sitting on my couch watching Shroud, flipping between games, being like, all right, it's interesting that like T1 is winning this. Dazed, a player on T1, like doesn't lose these 1v2s because he knows the players, he knows the situations. It's like fun to watch, and it is extra color on top of the standard stream. My understanding is that Overwatch doesn't do that. I don't think there is a way for them to easily, or maybe my understanding of like YouTube's community isn't quite there. I don't think it has the same culture of a lot of people being live simultaneously commenting on the same kind of thing that Twitch does. And so it would feel even kind of weird to me to be on YouTube and see multiple people like co-streaming an Overwatch League game. But maybe I'm wrong. But in either case, like I think that has a big impact on the final numbers. So
no, I think you're right. You don't have the same element in Twitch of like looking at everyone's point of view in a Fortnite tournament. And from my understanding and my reporting, the league doesn't want that. Like the league wants to stream the match and everybody go to one place. It's actually one small tidbit that might be interesting to viewers is players in Overwatch League, at least in previous seasons, maybe it's changed this season, but in previous seasons, they couldn't stream on YouTube or Twitch while Overwatch League matches were happening because Overwatch wanted the focus, the fans, the attention to be on the match, which makes sense. But I think, I've heard that from players before because it rubs up against their audience they're trying to build, just streaming, relaxing on Twitch or wherever. So that's a bit of an addendum, but like, I do think it's a different approach to try to build these audiences.
I wonder if anyone else has thoughts on this, but to me that really sucks. Like so much of building an esports org these days is in some way like doing content, building up content around your players, building up their brands. Like every player that I talk to right now has their own, and I focus mostly on Valorant, but like has their own stream, has their own merch, has their own Discord server. People are all watching together. They're all engaged. If you disallowed Valorant players from streaming while a Valorant match was going on, like that would be, it would decimate that model to a certain extent, but then you'd try and have to like rein in, I don't know, Ninja. Ninja has like a not particularly good Valorant team that he leads. And if Riot went to Ninja and said, you cannot stream while we're hosting a game, first of all, he would extricate himself from the scene, probably. If he wasn't able to negotiate his own way out of that, like he would just not be a participant. Valorant loses a big influencer. I think all of that kind of like adds into the reason that we're looking at the Overwatch numbers right now and we're like, these numbers aren't that great. Part of it is this YouTube deal, which, yeah, they're trying to like justify after the fact. Part of it is the way they seem to be treating their players and their kind of content creation model, the players' brand and business. I don't know. I'm curious if anyone else on the call has thoughts about that.
Well, what you said earlier about every team and every player, and this is something probably Teddy will be excited to talk about, is like it does kind of remind me of journalism and journalists, and how like there's all this conversation about Substack and everyone breaking out on their own. Charlie Warzel starting his own Substack, the technology op-ed writer for the New York Times. And it just makes me think that it's, like, first of all, esports athletes have been on top of this game, doing that game for such a long time. And it also contributes to the difficulty in covering esports, because so much of the fans already get their content and what they need, or all that they need from the creators themselves. Also, to that point, it must be very exhausting to have to basically manage your own brand on top of trying to play good and also be part of a team. So I mean, those are just my thoughts immediately. So it's fascinating to hear that they even considered rating in people to not stream while the game is being hosted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
actually.
Shannon, I was curious.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just curious how League does this. Like, is there any similarity there, or just because?
I have no idea.
Yeah, so I did follow a bunch of League streamers / pro players, and some of them retired and now are just streamers. So yeah, there is like, you would look for the top players in League of Legends and say, I'm going to follow them because I want to get good at this game too. So I'm going to follow the person who plays my role. And so a lot of people were like, oh, you play bottom lane, you should go look at Double Lift. So that's why I started to like watch all of his videos. But I wouldn't say that he had really like a strong streamer personality. It was more like he's playing this game at the highest level, and then you just like watch him kill everyone, versus him being like, here's a funny joke. So I would say like they're not content personalities. It's not even a word, but they're not like streamers with personalities. They're more for like just being really strong competition. So I don't really see them streaming during the match. I think, again, kind of like Activision Blizzard, Riot just like streams it to, I don't know if it's Twitch and YouTube, but it's like their platforms, their call, and then if you wanted to hear like the player side of things, you would follow them on Twitter. So
yeah. I think I want to very briefly circle back to a thing Gene said. Like, when you are building an esports scene, you want to prove to players that this is a space in which they can succeed even individually. Because you can play, esports careers don't last that long. I think for most players, it is like a decade and a half if they're lucky, from like 15 to 30. And when you look at, Gene brought up the example of like Charlie Warzel at the New York Times, and like the New York Times is really good at building up personalities and building up brands and letting people run with their thing. And that's why I think in the past like 5 years, so many journalists end up at the New York Times, because that is a place where they know I'm going to have a massive audience. I have this huge platform. I am not going to be restricted that much in doing the thing that I want to do. And I graduate from the Times bigger than I was before. And the Overwatch League, based on what we've talked about just now, doesn't seem like it has that same developmental thrust. Maybe I'm oversimplifying.
So this is something, yeah, I wanted to bring this up too before Teddy asked me about League, which is just, I think, something that people I talked to in the Overwatch League noticed is that a lot of these players are not, like, English isn't their first language. They're speaking Korean or another language, and they have like a disconnect with the fan base, and the fans don't see them as individual people. And then I talked to like the head of Dallas Fuel, like the lead of gaming in MV Gaming, which owns Dallas Fuel, and he was like, he wants to help like the people who are more discriminatory see his players as people, as individuals, and it comes from like the content creation as well.
To chime in here, I think one other challenge when you're a Korean player on a North American team, it's also based off your team's infrastructure. Like, does your team have enough front office staffing to provide translation support or English to Korean or Korean to English lessons and instructions for the entire team? And so much of that feels very dependent franchise to franchise because the league's not involved there. It's really up to the owner or the owners about how much money they want to put into that support staff. So I think you'll get very different answers depending on what team you talk to there.
Yeah, that's totally fair. There is kind of interestingly a sort of parallel that I see to what's happening in Valorant right now. And I'm sorry to keep harping on Valorant, it's just the scene that I follow. There is one team in Korea that has garnered like an inordinate amount of attention from fans because they had like a 102 they had like a massive win streak. It just ended, but I think it is the longest win streak in the scene. Like, they have been unbeatable. And part of the fun of watching them, I've noticed, is that because they're playing in Korea, they are playing local events. So they meet up with the opponent, the opposing team in a big arena or some sound stage, and they're all playing, and you get to see their faces and you get to see their reactions, and like the casters call them out as individuals and you get to see them directly. And I'm wondering if right now we have, Teddy, you mentioned the Overwatch League is obviously going through a similar thing because there are just like regional differences in handling of COVID and so on. Like, what do you make of the fact that there are going to be like more visible in-person games in Southeast Asia for Southeast Asian teams? Like, how do you think that redounds for the Overwatch League?
I would love to know this answer more. Like, to me, this is like the question of season 4 in so many ways, and I feel like it only becomes more of the question of the season if you see North America teams go the entire season online, and Chinese and Korean teams based in China and Korea start doing live events. The reason I'm saying teams based there is because you have to remember, for those who don't know, there are a couple of teams who are from North America: Philadelphia Fusion, New York, LA Valiant, who are actually playing in Korea and China this season for varied reasons that I would like to report on more. But yeah, I mean, I think Overwatch definitely sees a growth audience, especially in China, and I think that COVID hit them hard last season, and they couldn't expand. They weren't going to. They had too many other problems. But I think after like season 2, you were probably talking European expansion. But now after season 3, I mean, who is even talking expansion after season 3? To be honest, I think there were far bigger concerns. But like, I definitely think there's a lot more focus towards owners and investors in China, and that's where the viewership growth was last season. That being said, that last season was the first time that matches happen in prime time for audiences in Korea and China. So it's just that's another one where I've felt a little confused about whether there's actually signal there. But yeah, it will be interesting. I guess, Mikhail, I didn't really answer your question. The answer is like, yeah, I think that absolutely could happen.
It was an insanely big question. So you handled it admirably. Shannon, I have a quick question about the Overwatch League and some of the reporting you did. You chatted with the folks at, I believe, Fuel about kind of next steps after the kind of really unfortunate stream from Fearless, where he talked about like being coughed on, yelled at, harassed by folks in Texas. Did any other teams, did the league in general tell you about steps they were taking to try and not resolve the issue, but make it easier for Korean players, Chinese players, and so on working in the US to feel more comfortable?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So Activision Blizzard, I remember they gave a statement, which is in our story that you can read on True.gg, but basically saying, that they condemn the racism and condemn this kind of harassment. I don't think they said much more beyond that. But the Dallas Fuel folks said that they called the security from the building. So Fearless was like around I'm gonna mess up the name of this place, but it's like a stadium where they play a lot of sports, and there's lots of crowds gathering all the time. So you can go back to the article and check the name if you were curious. But like around the Victory Park region is where he was hanging out on the street, and then there'd be people passing by to harass him, is according to his account. So Dallas Field was like they called the security for that area and also for the building that he stays at to like watch and make sure that doesn't happen again. But he did tell me like that when these players came to Texas, they were trained to prepare to in case people were rowdy and like wanted to talk to them and meet them, but they weren't trained on how to handle racism. So that was like a large oversight that they never took into consideration. That I noticed like some commentators or some comments on the article were calling this out and saying, "Wow, why didn't they get trained on racism?" But yeah, well, so that's basically what they've been doing, and going forward, I think they just want to like raise awareness.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It is kind of wild to think about esports organizations because on the one hand they are extremely professional operations. They have mind and body trainers for their athletes. They do all sorts of things. They spring in all sorts of ways. And then there are also just bizarre lapses in the things that they do in the kind of institutional infrastructure. Um, it's fascinating to think about. I don't have much more to add on that topic. Uh, to that end, I think we're going to move away from Overwatch League. Teddy, do you have any final points on the Overwatch League? Anything we need to know?
You need to know. No, I'm not. I was gonna say like when the next match is or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I think Shannon's reporting is really important. I hope you can focus on it more throughout the season. I think the MVPs of this league, the rookies of the year, are far more often than not Korean players coming to North America, to cities in a country that in many cases they had not been to before at the ages of like 18, 19, and 20 to be on a team that they don't know. And that's not the case for every player, but I think it's an important story to report on throughout all this that shouldn't just be, passed over to like, can Overwatch do live events again? I think, it's equally, if not more important. So
yeah, and I would add that. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Just like I just wanted to add quickly that yeah, it's not just an issue for Overwatch League. I think it's like the people I spoke to were also playing Valorant or playing or reporting on League of Legends or other esports, but also that the Washington Post itself has done a lot of reporting on anti-Asian racism like across the board, which has spiked during the pandemic as people were shouting like kung flu and all these like other racist terms, but it has always been in this country before that as well. So it's just like this societal trend.
Yeah. I have a final question here actually on this subject from the chat, which I think is really interesting and I genuinely don't have any insight in. Ed White asks, thoughts on Hawaii as a safety hedge against mainland racism? The plan, I believe, for this Overwatch League season is to move some of the games to Hawaii, where there'll be like relatively equal ping issues. Basically, the plan is to host some games in Hawaii. I don't have any particular insight on that question, but does anyone else have thoughts? Gene, I feel like you may have thoughts on this.
Ed's a friend of mine. What's up, Ed? I did not know that Overwatch was going to play in Hawaii, but that's interesting. You're definitely not going to see the same situation in Texas as you would in Hawaii. Not that anti-Asian racism doesn't exist in Hawaii, but it's a lot more complicated when you factor in issues about colonialism and white supremacy and the illegal takeover of the U.S. government of the Hawaiian Kingdom, which is a whole like decades long discussion that we won't get into right now. But generally speaking, Hawaii is what, like 70% Asian anyways. If you're not Asian, you're part Asian. So generally, if there's Asian players walking around in Hawaii, they're not going to look different at all. They're going to look like either tourists because they're acting funny, or other than that, no. I mean, like if they're tourists, they're probably going to be treated really well. That's about it. I'm excited to hear about more esports stuff happening in Hawaii. Hawaii has always positioned itself as a tourism destination. That's the gateway between the East and the West. And but it's always done that for business conferences. And a quick point of conflict of interest. I used to be the PR manager for the Hawaii Convention Center. So I'm very familiar with the business convention business in Hawaii, and there were some cons there. There's been some cons there, but there's never been a massive esports presence. So I am excited to hear more presence in Hawaii, at least as a former islander. So
yeah. If it's helpful to provide a wee bit of context, I'm pretty sure it's 2 teams from North America flying to Hawaii, and the predominant reason is visa issues with the ensuing pandemic around us. So like, let's fly these North America teams to literally the closest location to the teams in both China and Korea, and without having to get them visas, and work from there. With like a lot of, from my understanding, a lot of like pretty commendable work on the back end from Activision Blizzard to like make sure the ping is playable. So we'll see if it actually is. They say it is.
Well, internet sucks, so there's also that. So
yeah, I think we'll see. But it does mean that 2 teams who get to the farthest point of X tournament get to fly to Hawaii, like some, like Disneyland, Disney World prize, while quarantining in a hotel room. So
that's interesting. There is a Disneyland resort in Hawaii that opened up a couple years ago, and they got Mickey Mouse and Goofy hanging out there too. So pretty much would be like a Disneyland trip. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up staying there. It's a very isolated resort, away from the tourist destination and everything. So it would be an ideal place to safeguard your esports athletes.
God, it sounds like an extremely good time. I want to be sent to Hawaii to play video games. I would do that in a heartbeat.
It's a great resort. I'm just thinking about it right now. I would love to stay at the hotel right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's literally just Mickey Mouse just hanging around in the lobby, just like a normal person, It's just so much fun.
Well, speaking of, this is the most tortured segue in the world. Speaking of big mascots, let's talk about Resident Evil. So, Gene, my Resident Evil knowledge is so limited. I have no familiarity. I understand that there was a big showcase recently. Tell me what was shown at the showcase. Give me, as a non-Resident Evil guy, what's the down low on this showcase?
Sure. Well, the showcase led off with the fact that it's the 25th anniversary of Resident Evil, which is just mind-blowing to think about. I've been a Resident Evil fan since literally day one. When I saw Resident Evil as a concept in magazines for PlayStation 1, I was like, this is it. This is the future of gaming. And it kind of was, right? And it had all that corny voice acting and everything like that, but it was just so compelling. And then I quit video games for a little bit. And then it wasn't until several years later that I heard that there was a Resident Evil 2. And I was like, wait, they made another one? That's awesome. And then I kind of went back into it. So Resident Evil is like pretty much like one of the games that got me back into gaming because it's just always been going. So for the showcase, the star of the show was Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village, which is continuing the long epic saga of the virus that continues to plague the Resident Evil universe. It's incredible to me, first of all, to think about that. Like the same problem has been happening in the Resident Evil cities for how many times? Because later in the Resident Evil showcase, they also premiered a trailer for their Netflix 3D anime, Resident Evil Infinite Darkness. It's a CGI anime, and then Leon Kennedy, the protagonist of Resident Evil 2, 4, and 6, is given a photo of zombies. And then he's like, "Do you recognize this? This looks just like Raccoon City." And it's like, how many times has Leon like been shown like a picture of zombies? And it's like, wow, have you seen this? It's just like Raccoon City, and it's just really really hilarious. But I love that they keep doing that to these people, that throwing them into it. Again, back to Resident Evil Village. We got more footage of Lady Dimitrescu, which has been lighting up the internet. For her attractiveness, and so they announced a demo, a limited time demo. This is an interesting tactic that Capcom's been doing with the Resident Evil series lately, where you have a limited time to play the demo. Regular users on PC and Xbox can play the game on May 1st. May 1st in North America for 24 hours. And you only have an hour to play it. And once you're done with the hour, then you're locked out of the game. You're done. It's an hour-long experience. And PS4, PS5 players get the preceding weekend to play up to 8-hour shifts, and you can play the game at any time in between that 8-hour shift, earlier than anyone else in other platforms. And you get like 30 minutes each. I have no idea how that's actually going to work, or why 30 minutes when the later part gets an hour later. I'm not going to play the demo. Because I like to go into Resident Evil games completely blind and surprised by the mechanics. But we're gonna be able to see the game's village or castle areas, and we'll have an hour to explore both. And most people are wondering which area does Lady D show up in. So that's gonna be a speed run to find her, I guess. Because if you remember the visual demo, she ended that demo. Yeah. And then next we got the and Resident Evil 8 will also be returning the Mercenaries mode, which is a super popular multiplayer mode that started in Resident Evil 4 and really helped Resident Evil 4 kind of blow up. And it really contributes to like the long-term value of the game because it's just so much fun. It just turns Resident Evil into a straight-up action game. So with Mercenary modes and Resident Evil 8 being in first person, I'm interested to see how this mode will contrast against Call of Duty's ever popular Zombies mode, which is also a first-person shooter about zombies, but it's a lot more based on like points. The Mercenaries mode also is that. It's a time-based method in which you try to kill as many zombies as you can, and the more zombies you kill, the more time you get on the clock, and the more zombies you kill, the more points you get. The higher your points, then the better rewards you get, and you unlock some cool stuff for the game. So that's really exciting. Yes, and then there's Netflix anime. Oh, go ahead.
No, I have like the world's most basic question, and maybe this is Resident Evil 101. I remember when I was younger, I read, I think, like a Resident Evil novelization, and it was about people in a city, and they were fighting zombies, and they were fighting monsters, and there was an evil corporation, and I believe it. Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong thing, but the Umbrella Corporation.
That's the one,
okay, that's what I remember. And now today, we have the internet collectively thirsting over a large vampire. Zombies are nowhere in sight, as far as I can tell. There's no city. I don't know how a corporation gets involved in the mix of a big mansion in which there's a vampire mother with 3 vampire daughters, and there's an evil village. I'm lost. I need some kind of through line to help me here. How do we get from Zombie City to Village Vampires?
Into it. I love it. My lore knowledge falls apart after Resident Evil 6 because I didn't play 7 because I actually thought it was too scary. Resident Evil 8, I'm gonna have no problems playing it. I'm not gonna be scared at all. I'm gonna be very excited to play it, right? Yeah. But Resident Evil 1 to 3 was the city saga. That's the novelization saga that you remember, where they're in Raccoon City and then the zombies are all over the place and the cops have to try to escape and kill the city. And it's all started from the Umbrella Corporation, right? And then, of course, everybody in the world knows that the Umbrella Corporation was evil and created zombies. So how has this company continued to exist? I'm not exactly sure, and I don't think they really answered that. I think that continues to be the mystery. We saw an Umbrella logo in the castle of this village with Lady D and her vampire daughters. So obviously they're tied into the company somehow. But starting from Resident Evil 4, which is the real pivotal point of the series, and basically the creation of third-person shooter, where Shinji Mikami, the creator of Resident Evil, basically turned the camera and then made it to a little bit to the left, and all of a sudden you have your classic third-person shooter angle. That was the game that started that all, as well as the N64 cult classic Winback. In Resident Evil 4, they took Leon Kennedy, the hero of Resident Evil 2, and the president's daughter was kidnapped. I like that Shannon leaves as I'm getting to the part about the president's daughter being kidnapped, and then Leon has to go save her in the Spanish village again in a village, where everyone's speaking Mexican, of course. They're not speaking Spanish; they're speaking Mexican, and that was kind of like a cultural reset for the Resident Evil series, where they're like, okay, we're gonna take it out of the city and we're gonna give it a little bit more rural, like old town type feeling, type of stuff.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 5 was in Africa and was famously in trouble for its very racist portrayal of black zombies. So to fix that, they threw in a bunch of white zombies and Asian zombies in there. Resident Evil 6 was an absolute mess of a story, and that's where the entire story starts to gets really confusing and starts to reach really, really Kingdom Hearts level of nonsense in terms of where the story is going. And I have no idea why Chris Redfield, the hero of Resident Evil 1, seems to be a bad guy in this one. I have no idea how we got to that point.
Yeah, that's the thing. It felt to me, judging exclusively from trailers, I have not played any of these games. I am a scaredy cat. Everything is too scary for me. It seems like 7 was just like you're invited into a spooky house and you're chased around. I was like, all right, I don't see the line from Zombie City to this, but the workings of Resident Evil will forever remain outside of my grasp. Shannon, what is your Resident Evil experience, if any?
Yeah, I'm on the same boat where I always the most terrifying monster to me was zombies. So I was like, I will avoid anything related to zombies for sure. However, during the pandemic, I was like, wait, I'm actually less scared of zombies now, and I can take horror games and horror movies. Everything I thought was terrifying, I can accept now for some reason. It helps me de-stress. I feel relieved. Like last week's stream with Phasmophobia, that was pretty fun. I was very scared, and then later I got less scared. So I would say that I don't have any experience, but I will be playing the new game for sure.
I would highly recommend Resident Evil for stress management. If you're not scared of blood or monsters or whatever like that, if that doesn't scare you at all, then I would, because I play Resident Evil for stress management. One of the most heartening things I heard from the showcase was the director saying Resident Evil 8 is going to have the same kind of resource management that you expect from the series. And a lot of Resident Evil is about just resourcing what you have in your pockets. And I find that extremely, extremely therapeutic. To kind of be okay, I need this, I need to drop this, I need to bring this over here. It's like Resident Evil games are like a puzzle box that you just kind of know how to solve, and you just do it over and over again. So I play a lot of Resident Evil games. I end up speed running Resident Evil games. I can beat Resident Evil 2 in an hour and a half.
Oh my god.
I would dedicate a weekend. I was like, okay, this is the weekend where I'm going to learn how to do all these steps, and when I reach the second zombie, I'm going to juke to the right, do that so I can save the ammo. There's you really gotta set it down. It's the only game where I've really appreciated the speedrunners hustle, right? Where you really gotta count the seconds for every single time. So that to me, it's I don't like speed running, but for some reason with Resident Evil games, it just clicks for me. So
I think I'm just genuinely a scaredy cat. I don't like jump scares at all. I was watching a trailer for Them yesterday, which is a new Amazon show, and I've heard bad things about it, so I was like, let me just watch the trailer at least. And there was this obvious setup for a jump scare where this girl is approaching a closet and she's in a dark room. Everything slows down for a second. The music drops out. She's just looking at this closet. And I'm like, all right, well, this sucks. I don't want to watch this. So what I do in those cases is I scroll down the YouTube video. I leave like a sliver of it open so I can see when it happens or like at the briefest hint. But for the most part, I can't deal with that. I will watch Midsummer. I'll watch Saw. I love Saw. But I don't think I can do jump scares. It's just not.
The Resident Evil series is all over the place. From 4 through 6, they're basically an action game. 4 is a little bit more traditional survival horror because it takes place in a gothic castle. 6 is absolutely manic because the final boss is a Tyrannosaurus Rex zombie that you fight on the back of a Jeep. So,
okay.
And at the end of Resident Evil 5, Chris, the hero of Resident Evil 1, literally punches a boulder with his own hands to get it out of the way, and that's like the mechanic of the final boss. So which is why Resident Evil 7 and 8 are kind of a reset to kind of try to go back to the scary roots again, and kind of like reintroduce like the more like suburban or like the forest area type scares that Resident Evil 1 was more known for, as opposed to the explosions in the cities and everything. So.
Yeah. Quick question from the.
Speaking of the movie, there's also they also updated the Welcome to Raccoon City Resident Evil movie. I don't even know anything about that, but if you read our Oscars feature from last year, I call Paul W.S. Anderson the best director of video game movies because he directed 6 Resident Evil movies, and for some reason they became a multi-billion-dollar franchise. And he's been doing that with his wife the whole time. And they've just been making Capcom movies because they just made Monster Hunter a couple months ago. So it's a very, very wholesome story in Hollywood, I think.
That's the other thing about Resident Evil that doesn't scan for me. The other on YouTube really wants me to watch like 2 categories of things, and one of them is clips from superhero shows and movies and scenes from scary movies. And so this was maybe a month ago, YouTube surfaced a clip from maybe the first Resident Evil movie for me. And it's a Mila Jovovich, and she's being escorted by a security team. And all of a sudden, her security team gets trapped in this hallway. Both doors lock on either side, and these lasers start zipping back and forth down the hallway. And guys are getting cut up.
That's a great scene.
Yeah, it ends with a guy getting like just diced. And I'm watching that, and I hate to harp on this, but the line between that and Resident Evil 7, which is again like scary hillbillies chase you around an old house, I don't get it. But quick question from the chat. I don't know if anyone knows this yet. I don't know if there's been an answer to this, but do you need to play 7 to understand the story in Village?
Yes, it does seem like you do need to. One of the jokes yesterday from the Resident Evil 8 trailer is everyone kept saying the name Ethan Winters over and over again. And if you never play Resident Evil 7, then that name means nothing to you whatsoever. And even if you did play Resident Evil 7, doesn't really mean a lot because he wasn't that much of an interesting character. He was more like your first-person body that you go through that first area with the hillbillies, running, which was very scary enough for me to unplug it. So yeah, I do think that you do need to play Resident Evil 7 before you play Resident Evil 8, which I have to do actually. I have it installed. So, yeah.
Well, good luck with that, Gene. Speaking of things that are scary because the plug is being pulled, Shannon, you wrote a feature for us about Flash being retired, the software, and developers having to move their games from Flash to a different software code base or engine.
Of all time, for sure.
I'm trying. I'm really just pulling. I'm on something today, but
big mascot.
Shannon,
it's hard to follow up, but yeah.
yeah. There's no way. That's the peak.
Yeah, I always am like, where's the transition going? Like, it could be anything. What was scary that I wrote in the past 2 weeks? Nothing. Nothing was scary. But yeah, so Flash is dead since last December, and then there were some games and some companies that we talked to. Elise and I. Elise is now gone. Rip. But so there were a couple of companies like Newgrounds for newgrounds.com. I remember like going on that website when I was very little and checking out these games that are clearly not for kids. But then that website, a lot of the games ran on Flash. So I wanted to talk to the founder to see like what's up with the website now. Is it working? And if you go on Newgrounds today, there are some like they were able to port some of these games to Ruffle, which is like Flash. So a lot of the games look like they're running on Flash anyway, but they aren't. It's like a substitute for it. So it's pretty good. They saw this coming super early on, so they were able to port so many games over. Meanwhile, Neopets wasn't so well off. They knew about the change that Flash was dying, but they have a very, very small team. They were prioritizing certain features. So a lot of the website wasn't really usable after December. But January, February, they gradually added more features back. So you'll see like Neopets is getting there. There's still large parts of the site that are broken. But the big thing from the story that I wanted to highlight on Twitter is that Neopets teased that they're coming to the Nintendo Switch, but no other details.
That is really big. So I have no experience playing Neopets. For me, my Flash games past was Mini Clip and addicting games. It was a lot of like Escape the City. It was Heli Attack. It was there was a developer called Nitrome that developed these lovely pixel animated little cute platformers with really unique mechanics. That was like the thing I would do with my friends at lunch in like middle school, but never touched Neopets. And I, over the years, have heard of it referred to as like a game, people's first experience coding a website, a like pet raising Tamagotchi like experience. Give me the brief. What is Neopets? Because I am at a loss.
Okay. Yeah, I actually went on a live stream before to describe Neopets. It took me 2 hours, but I'll try to condense it for this. Yeah, so neopets.com, it's still functioning as a site. But basically you have like 4 Neopets. You can have up to 4. Now you can have up to 5, I think, if you spend money. It's become that kind of game. But before, so it's like 1 to 3 Neopets, and then you pick the species you want, the type, and then you feed them. But even if you don't feed them, they don't die. It says they're dying, but they never actually die. And you can also put them in a hotel to like take care of them. And then there's always this website really struck me as super creative and imaginative, because every couple of months there'd be this epic plot that takes over the website. Like you have to save the world, and there's like a comic strip, and you have to click through the pages to see like which hero, what's happened to the hero now. Now you have to solve a puzzle to get them out. So it's like an interactive plot that encapsulates the whole website, and then if you participate, you get a trophy. So you get to collect those on your profile page. And there's also a newspaper. I used to write for that newspaper. You can write like fictional stories and submit them. There's a chat board. I mean, honestly, and then also there's a game section with like hundreds of different games that all ran on Flash. So now I don't know, like some of them are maybe functioning, but most of them are not functioning. And then, yeah, they kept adding more content, more worlds, but the history of Neopets itself is pretty sad because they were bought by Viacom. So originally, I think they were made by college students in the UK. They were bought by Viacom, and then Viacom sold them to Jumpstart. And Jumpstart has been known for making educational games. So it's got a younger audience in mind. So a lot of the older people on Neopets were like, I'm going to be alienated by this. I want, a more mature website, but this is going towards like little kids. So I think Jumpstart has had to like win over those fans. But at the same time, Flash died. So now half the site's not functioning, and they're trying to bring it to mobile and maybe to the Switch. So it's chaos.
God, I think I understand it better now.
Okay.
I think I get it. No. The explanation was good. I think Neopets is just such a massive thing at this point that it defies explanation. Kind of like similarly, I think if you asked someone to explain Fortnite and they were like, "Oh, well, it's a battle royale," that would not give you the full picture. And
Mhm.
so, yeah,
That's a good way of thinking of it. It's like a metaverse from 20 years ago.
that is the sort of thing it felt like as you were describing it, of like, oh, there's like so much stuff going on in here. It really does feel like, yeah, I mean, there's a newspaper you can do. It's that like metaverse idea of not necessarily like goods and services happening in a virtual space, but like different jobs you can do, stuff that is like user generated. That's really interesting. Um,
Yeah,
I,
I mean, there are some great artists from there that have been posting comics, or one person like wrote a fictional story every single week. And that was like the meme from the 2 hour stream I was on, was like, I need to find the user who made all these stories. His name is Hurdy Gurdy. I still need to find him. Um, shout out to Hurdy Gurdy. But yeah, just like there's some dedicated loyal fans who continue to make art, and it was like maybe Jumpstart can collaborate with them to produce merch, or who knows what the plan is from there, but there's just this like untapped potential of fandom.
Hurdy-gurdy is a fun name. Did you know that a hurdy-gurdy is actually a type of instrument?
No, I didn't know.
Okay, it's not. That's the thing. Like it has such a namey sound because it's just like two things rhymed, but it is a, I believe it's a string instrument that is like a guitar that you crank, I think. I've seen it played. I don't know what sound it makes because I saw it in like the context of a big ensemble, but yeah, hurdy-gurdy is an instrument. The more
Wow,
you know.
yeah, I didn't know that. Thanks for teaching me that.
It would make I'm saving you the trouble of trying to Google hurdy-gurdy because you will find a lot of, I think it's a medieval instrument. I don't know for sure. You will probably, that's probably what's going to surface for you and not the Neopets person.
Wow, yeah,
Um
I always type it with Neopets, but that's
Gotcha. That a much smarter approach than just Googling hurdy-gurdy.
oh,
Um yeah. Do you think this is maybe too big of a question for any one person, but Neopets planning on coming to Switch, planning on coming to mobile. How realistic is it that like Neopets comes back in a big way?
yeah, they also were in talks of doing a TV show. I think they
Oh
are
my
on
god.
mobile. You just like have to open the website. I don't know if they
Hmm.
have an app yet, but they have like an island builders game too. They have a mobile game. They continuously make those over time. But basically, there's always going to be nostalgia for it, just like other brands that you might think of from your childhood. But will it come back in a big way? Depends on if it comes to the Switch in a timely manner. Like if the next Nintendo console comes out before they even come to the Switch, then that kind of cancels out their progress. So we just have to kind of see how things play out.
Yeah. If we have any Neopets heads in the chat, uh, throw in your predictions about whether Neopets ever successfully comes back. Because I, as a non Neopets, the recurring thread of this stream so far is that I have not played many games, and I am a big skeptic of their ability to succeed. But now I'm curious to see whether the chat believes that Neopets is coming back. I'd love to see it. It sounds like a fascinating space.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gene, did you ever play Neopets?
Nope. Nope. A lot of people know me as a big Pokemon fan, but I was not even a really big Pokemon fan. I only got in Gen 1, and after the next generations, I got out. So, you know, um, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what
it's
makes
it's,
our
it's, it's Monster Hunter for me.
yeah.
That's my jam.
Yeah. I think it makes our team stronger that we have people like focused on very separate things. Like I didn't have consoles growing up, so that was like a huge hole in my experience, and that's why I was like so in Neopets, because I was like, this is like a whole world, and then also Maple Story, and
Mhm.
I had the exact same experience where my parents are from the Soviet Union. They came to the US and they were like very against video games, which is why I'm now working in games journalism. But so no consoles until like a mischievous uncle gifted me a Wii like years after it came out. So yeah, a lot of like PC gaming, a lot of RuneScape, a lot of like Star Wars, like bootleg Star Wars Battlefront, online shooters and stuff like that. But yeah, also missed out on the consoles. But yeah, never touched on Neopets, unfortunately.
Oh
A
wow.
big gap.
It still exists. You can still get in on it.
Yeah, maybe. So I'll add it to the list of hundreds of games that I should play at some point. It
Yeah.
feels like
it's interesting because I grew up in Guam and we didn't really have like stores to buy games at. So it was a lot of like just electronic stores that would just sell them, and they would import it from Asia. So I played Famicom. I played Super Famicom because I was like, when my grandma came back from Japan, she gave me a Nintendo. I had to get my video games from Asia because that was the only place to get it. So like I was paying like $150, or my parents were paying $150 just for me to get Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the Super Nintendo.
Oh my god,
it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I didn't have anything like that. I had my neighbor. Like I had random neighbors who were playing on their console. Like, hey, you want to come over? So I played like Super Mario Bros. That way. And people had Game Boys obviously and brought them to school. So I would just kind of like mooch off of everyone around me.
Oh yeah. That was my experience too. I remember there was like a week that my older sister borrowed a Game Boy Color from someone and played like an early Pokemon game on there. And it was supposed to be the two of us playing together, but she cannibalized. I think our team, our big heavy hitters on that team were Nido King and Nido Queen, both just like leveled up really high. Very weird gaming childhood. Also, Elise is in the chat. Says Neopets was a big part of my childhood. It's wild to me that it even still exists. Elise did hear you saying R.I.P. Shannon.
Oh, sorry, Elise. Welcome to the chat. Great to have you.
There's going to be some beef to squash. No, I'm sure it's fine. Gar in the chat says Neopets has the capacity to generate memes and millennial nostalgia. I would be surprised if it made a resurgence, which
I think because I'm an older millennial, I kind of missed that boat, right? Like I was only at the tail end of the SpongeBob like revolution.
Oh.
So like I'm like familiar with SpongeBob and I enjoyed it, but like it didn't like encapsulate my life like it does for so many people. So like I think I totally missed the boat on Neopets and like the early Disney Channel era stuff. Really popular. Like I missed all of that stuff because I was 25. So
yeah, I love Disney Channel stuff too. Like you can talk to me about early 2000s things.
Oh yeah. Even Stevens, what a good show. No, but it's funny to hear the SpongeBob revolution brought up as a phrase. Like again, drawing back on like the Soviet parents looking down on Western culture and indulgence. I distinctly remember as a kid, like my parents used to tell me that like SpongeBob was for dumb kids. Like, don't watch SpongeBob. That's not for you. That like it'll melt your brain. Only stupid people watch SpongeBob. And so for the longest time, I was like, better not watch SpongeBob. And then eventually we reached the era. I reached the point with my older sister where we were obviously watching it all the time, and we would do the thing where you hit the last channel button so that it quickly switches back to whatever was on before.
Oh yes, I remember that. I remember that trick. Yes.
Wild.
Wow,
times.
that was so handy.
Yeah.
Well, my
it's
mom
like
was not as strict as that. She didn't care, but I didn't like it wasn't super appealing to me because I was like, these characters are a little dumb, but everyone else liked it. So
yeah. Elise says, "Ah ha 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 ha! It's okay, Shannon. It was hilarious." So
the way you read that is like you're an AI.
Yeah, it was just Microsoft Sam. Ah ha 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 ha! It's okay, Shannon. It was hilarious. Yeah.
That was a good imitation.
Yeah. God. Microsoft, since we're on the throwback train anyways, how about Microsoft Sam? No memories of Microsoft Sam? Oh well.
Who is that?
Microsoft Sam, Microsoft Sam was the text to speech, the default text to speech on old PCs. And the reason I became familiar was because, do you guys remember Rafflecopter Swa 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 Swa?
Yeah,
Was that a
totally.
meme that was in your headspace at
Microsoft
all?
Sam. There you go.
Yeah, so people used to type in Rafflecopter SOI SOI SOI, and it sounded like a helicopter flying away. There was a very crass and probably poorly aged YouTube show called Arby and the Chief, about a Arbiter and Master Chief doll that like lived in real life and they played Halo together. And Microsoft Sam was voiced in Microsoft, or Master Chief was voiced by Microsoft Sam. So
Great.
um
So no, I don't remember this guy, but now I can picture it
Ah.
perfectly. This is great.
Yeah.
I just know the paper clip from the Microsoft Word documents.
Elise says, "Proud dumb person here that watches SpongeBob."
Aw.
Yeah, dumb squad, rise up.
Is
Yeah.
that the name of our viewers? No, I'm just kidding.
No, we're not. We're not renaming the launch crew the dumb squad. That would be. I think we might have some trouble. We might run into some trouble there. What else happened this week? There was also. Oh, Shannon, you spent some. Did you spend some time with Pokemon Snap? What exactly? Give us the down low on Pokemon Snap. You
Yeah.
learned some new information.
Yeah, so I was able to hear back on some of my questions via email. Actually, I have another question that didn't come back, so maybe I'll update this story after this. But yeah, I got some answers back from Bandai Namco, which is developing new Pokemon Snap, on some features in the game and like how did the game change from 21 years ago when it came out in 1999 on Nintendo 64. So I think the most interesting thing that I can remember, you can again read this article on launcher.gg, but was a part about the pester ball. So there was a toxic repellent ball that you could throw at Pokemon in 1999 in the original game, and so actually that has been removed for this version in 2021 because the pester ball was seen as something that was kind of unkind. And shout out to our video producer John for bringing up that question to me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I definitely have to ask this. And yeah, so it turned out like that was a little bit mean to the Pokemon. So instead of a pester ball, the new game has fluff fruit, which looks just like an apple, but we're not allowed to call it an apple. And the fluff fruit, you can like throw it at a Pokemon, and it also like the Pokemon will react like, oh, you hit me. So you can choose not to throw it. You could just put it next to the Pokemon, and they can just go eat it, and you get a reaction, and you can take a photo. So that was pretty cool. I thought like getting more information on that was nice.
Yeah, it's amusing that the developer that you spoke with was it your phrasing or their phrasing that the game has become more progressive?
I wrote that it became more progressive.
Okay.
But that it was too unkind for our times.
That's right. That was the phrasing.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about like changing norms, being like, yeah, I guess we cannot torture Pokemon anymore in our video game. Like, we just can't do that.
Yeah,
But
it's no longer a nice thing to do, but it was acceptable back in 1999.
I think the graphics were a little crude too, so there was a much bigger disconnect in terms of throwing a ball at a Pokemon's head then versus like now when they actually react and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So,
right. Yeah, if you go back and look at the game from 21 years ago, it looks really like blurry and you can't really see anyone's reactions. And there's no nighttime either, and just daytime. But I didn't
it's a
get
great
to
game. My friend became a photographer because of the game.
Oh wow.
Really? Wow.
It inspired a lot of photography careers. Pokemon
Yeah,
Snap.
I heard that. That's actually very interesting. Maybe.
Might be a good story to talk to photographers and
Yeah.
Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, I
I'm
think so.
almost I'm almost curious about the inverse now, because back then, like, you did not always have a camera on your person at all
Mm,
times, and now you do. And there are a lot of people who are going to be coming to new Pokemon Snap with a whole new
mm,
vocabulary for taking photos, a whole
mm.
new style and familiarity.
A
I'm
new
curious what comes out of
mindset,
that.
really, because back then when you had a camera, like you had a camera for a purpose.
Yeah,
You were gonna shoot something. You were there to photograph something.
yeah,
Now I have a camera right here. Well, I'm looking at a camera right here.
yeah.
It's just like our relationship with cameras. It's just completely different.
You had
Not
to
with
be
Pokemon.
mindful of like how many pictures you'd taken, because it was like, oh, maybe I'm gonna run out of film. So that's not a thing anymore.
I think
Yeah, but in Monster Hunter, I already have like 300 shots saved up. So.
Yeah. Shannon, what were you gonna say?
yeah, there was like an episode of really old Superman that I watched on Disney Plus for some reason. I decided to watch this, and it was like Clark Kent as a journalist. He has his camera and he like goes onto the scene to take a photo of what's happening, but he was
Yeah.
just there as Spider-Man punching the villain. So he goes back, grabs the photo, mails it to his editor. It's like, "Hey, I got the picture." And the editor's like, "Yeah, it's a great picture. Let's run it." And it's like only he could do it because he's Superman. But
Yeah.
back then it would have been really hard to get a good photo of the crime scene.
I find it amusing to imagine like J. Jonah Jameson on Twitter in the replies to somebody who's taken a picture of Spider-Man being like, "Hey, this is J. Jonah Jameson of the Daily Bugle. Can we use your photo?" As opposed to the old strategy of sending
Oh
out.
God, like that would be really funny to be a
Yeah.
parody account on Twitter that pretends to be one of those really earnest young journalist
Uh-huh.
producers from
Oh
local
yeah.
TV news who are like,
Yeah.
"Hey, glad you're okay. Anyways, whenever you're safe from the bullets and hellfire,
Yeah.
could we use that video?"
Yeah.
Like,
I'm Craig from like an indecipherable number of letters. Like local Kansas WXN78. All right.
yeah,
Ugh.
yeah.
Not to
Not to make
dump
fun of
on
local
on
news.
these people.
But
Yeah.
but 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 I but just to pivot for journalism, I do think that we need to figure out some other way to ask
Yeah.
for those,
We're
and it would be
we're
a
making
really funny way to highlight the problem by using a Jonah Jameson saying,
yeah.
"Hey, hope you're okay. Do you have pictures of Spider-Man?"
We're making fun of a very narrow slice of tweets, not people, to be
Yeah,
perfectly clear.
exactly.
We're not being mean. You can't accuse us of being mean. Um, I think that's everything that happened this week. Nothing else really happened. So
It's been slow times, but next week will be we got the Mortal Kombat movie dropping
yeah.
into to HBO next week, so
Oh god,
I'll be
that's
writing
true.
more about that next week. Very excited to talk more about it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I'm joking. Of course, so much more happened this week, and we could keep talking, but I think we should cut this at a reasonable time. But there's a lot to talk about next week. HBO's new Mortal Kombat movie. There's new Fortnite stuff. There's new Valorant stuff. There's new Call of Duty stuff. I'm sure there's other stuff I'm forgetting that's going to be new. Am I missing anything obvious?
I'm absolutely forgetting something, but I don't know.
So I guess we forgot to talk about the game developer story that went up yesterday, but it's fine. I think everyone can just go read it, so no need to talk about it.
Go to launcher.gg. That's launcher.gg. And on it is the main story. Read the opening anecdote. Even for that, I mean, here's everybody mute the video for a second. I'm going to talk to the journalists one-on-one for a sec. Guys, we're going to tell them to go to the homepage. We're going to tell them just to read the opening anecdote. That's going to hook them enough to keep reading the rest. Now we can tell them to unmute. The rest of the story is really good, but the opening anecdote is like killer. It is. Shannon, I'll actually let you do the sales pitch for the opening anecdote, which rocks.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Mikhail, you helped me fine-tune the opening anecdote, so thanks for that. Yeah, so it's basically, the Respawn game director who, was working on the Apex Legends Season 5 for last year in like May. he noticed his team is actually really stressed out. And so basically nobody was telling him. And that's what he realized. But it was a gradual process of finding that out from other people, just like asking around because people weren't willing to tell him. And yeah, this is just like a story of the developers reflecting on over a year of working in the pandemic. I feel like everyone has seen a lot of these like pandemic stories, so it's like very tired to continue reading them. But in this one, at least we talk about like the ways that companies are improving their policies and kind of changing things for even after the pandemic so that work conditions can be a little bit better. So there's like a positive light to it as well as the negative.
Yeah. I think we'll have a good chance. Oh, go ahead, Gene.
I like that the Respawn example is like and I don't know the guy, I don't know the circumstances of this, but from what I read from your article, that the Respawn leadership sounds like a good example of proactive leadership, because you can't just wait to find out what the problems are, because sometimes people just won't tell you because there's a certain fear factor built in, right, to that structure of power there. So it does. So it was really heartening to. That's why it's a kick-ass anecdote, because it's just like it's nice to hear about someone being a little bit more proactive about the people that they're supposed to be overseeing.
Yeah, and the examples in the story, there are just quite a few of them. Riot instituted some changed policies about time off and encouraging people to take time off. The folks at Mojang, which develops Minecraft, did the same. I recently talked to a friend who works at Spotify, which is very, very big company, can kind of afford to have very liberal workplace policies, but they have like weeks where they'll let folks take off and just like work on code stuff. And a lot of people just like, they don't do code stuff. They just use that as a break to recharge. I don't know anything about the state of burnout or crunch at Spotify, but my assumption is that with policies like that, folks are a bit happier. They're easier to kind of retain and keep in. And it's heartening to see the dev studios, or some of the studios that you talk to, implementing, or at least, stepping in that direction. I think we'll have a good occasion to talk about that story in greater depth next week, because there are going to be so many updates to games dropping. But that's a fantastic story, and everyone should go to launcher.gg and read that, because it is very good.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for your editing it.
It's also in the chat. Mike Hume has helpfully linked to it in the chat. So,
oh, thanks, Mike.
All right, well, I think unless we have anything else to add, this might be a good place to wrap up. What do you say?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Happy Friday.
All right. Well, as always, our outro is have a safe launch crew, and have a good Friday and weekend. Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.